Hey everyone, so today I'm going to be doing a video that I haven't seen done before, but I'm sure they're out there somewhere, and that's going to be basically tips for high school success. I'm going to break it down year by year, what you need to do to make sure you graduate and you end up at the perfect college for you. So I'm going to go through, things you should do freshman and sophomore year to make sure you're staying on track. I'm going to go through the college application process and ultimately finding the right school for you. It's a big deal, and I just graduated from high school, so I've been through it. I'm enrolled in my school. I start in 2 weeks, and I think I'm happy with my decision. So I just want to give you some advice to make sure that you end up at the school that's right for you. So basically, during freshman and sophomore year, you're not necessarily going to have to tour colleges. You're not going to have to be applying or anything like that. So basically, the advice I can give to you is start ACT and SAT prep, get good grades, make connections with your teachers, and get in a lot of extracurriculars. So I'll be honest, during my freshman and sophomore year, my grades were not good. I mean, they weren't bad, but for my standards, I knew I could do better. And I ended up regretting that in the end because, my GPA overall wasn't as good as it should have been. So just make sure you're staying motivated, even freshman and sophomore year. You need to be thinking about college. You need to be thinking about, ending up with a bright future, and you need to be working hard. Also, I know a lot of people that procrastinated on their standardized test prep, and that ended up hurting them in the end. I'd recommend getting books to help you with SAT or ACT prep, or I took tests online, and that really helped me because you can go to the ACT website. I took the ACT. I took the SAT once, like sophomore year, but I didn't end up using my score or anything, so I thought the ACT worked better for me and for the colleges that I was applying to. So I took a lot of tests online because they'll give you sample ACT tests, and you take them online, and then they'll give you your score, and you can just, they'll tell you how you can improve, and especially in the science section, that really helped me. So it's good to take practice tests, find out where your weak areas are. I wish I would have read more in high school because my reading scores were not on par with the rest of my scores, and if I would have done better in the reading section, my overall ACT score would have been like 2 points higher, and that's kind of frustrating. So just, figure out what your worst areas are and improve them, and practice, practice, practice. Because, your scores do make a big difference in college applications, so don't stress about it, but you need to make sure that, you're getting it done. So another thing that I didn't really do in high school was make really good connections with my teachers. I slept a lot in class, I'm not going to lie. I wasn't the best student, and in the end, it was really hard for me to find teachers to write letters of recommendation for me. So make sure that you're making really solid connections with your teachers, so that's not going to be a problem. And I know a lot of schools don't require it, but letters of recommendation always help. So in the end, I had my Spanish teacher write my letter of recommendation because I had her for 3 years, and I think that we got along really well, but they prefer to see like either a math or science teacher, and then either like an English or what's the other core subject? Social studies. Okay, that was not okay. But so yeah, just make really good connections with your teachers, and that shouldn't be a problem. And then the final piece of advice I can give you is make sure you join a lot of extracurriculars and find the one that works best for you. I lettered in drama and choir, so you don't necessarily have to play sports, but colleges love to see continuity, so they'd like to see you in the same extracurricular for 4 years. So make sure you find something you love, but have a good plethora of things you're involved in as well. It's cool if you're involved in a sport, and then involved in your church, and then involved in music too, so you can show that you're really well-rounded. And volunteering is also very important. They ask you for your volunteer hours when you apply, so that's always good to have too. I know when I was in an interview for a scholarship, they were asking me all about my experience building a house for Habitat for Humanity. I found that really interesting, and they thought it was a really good thing, and I got to talk about it. So just make sure, find a mission trip with your church or synagogue or, your school, something like that, to make sure that you've got those volunteer hours in check. So next I'm going to be talking about junior year, and that's really when the whole college search begins. So the first thing I can advise you to do is narrow down the choices of what college you think you're going to be looking for. So you've got to decide if you want to be in a small city or a big city, a big school or a small school. So for me, I knew I wanted to be at a big school, like over 10,000 people, preferably over 15,000 people, just because I feel like there's more opportunities to meet people. everything. I just really wanted to be in a big school, and I wanted to be in either a medium or big city. So I toured schools in the Twin Cities, I toured schools in Chicago. Just, I really wanted to be in a big city where there was a lot of stuff to do. So you need to start searching and figure out, what schools are going to work for you, where you want them, how big they are. But obviously you need to think of tuition too. And in my personal experience, I received a lot more financial aid from private schools than public schools. But then again, private schools are a lot more expensive. So in the end, it kind of evened out. If there are certain schools that you really, really love and you're afraid of the tuition, regardless of if they're private or public, I'd say just apply to them. Because there were some schools that I was like, oh, well, they're public schools and they're out of state, so I'm not going to get any financial aid, and I don't want to apply to them. And then I had friends that applied to them who had worse grades than me, and they got a ton of financial aid. Be money conscious, but don't let it completely dictate, what schools you apply to. And I definitely recommend starting to tour schools junior year. I started touring schools like the summer after my junior year. I wish I would have started earlier. I'd just say the more you tour, the more possibilities you have. In the end, I only toured 3 schools and I ended up applying to all of them. And I wish I would have toured more so that I would have had more options. And finally, senior year. Senior year is crazy. It's so much fun. It's your last year in high school. I mean, it's a lot of fun. You get a lot of opportunities, but it's also crazy with the applications. So much stress, so much waiting, so much work to do. So definitely be prepared and know what you're going to be expecting. And if you're going into your senior year, I hope this advice helps you. I ended up finishing all my applications around the mid to end of October, but most applications are available at the beginning of September. So, why not start right away and just get them over with? So I'm sure you've heard this before, but you should apply to some safety schools, which means schools that you're going to get into. Some middle of the road, like you probably will get into them, but you're not positive. And then a couple stretch schools that, it's a possibility that you're going to get into them, but you don't really know that. It's just kind of, I really hope I can get in there. So I only applied to one of each. I applied to a school that my grades and scores were way higher than, the average admittant, and I still really loved it. I still could imagine myself going there. And then I applied to middle of the road that I was pretty sure I'd get into, and then I applied to one that had always been my dream school. I ended up applying to, my dream school, the one that my mom had gone to, the one that I just loved. I'd loved since I was a little kid, and I always wanted to go there, but I was kind of like, I don't know if I can get in. But I still bit the bullet and applied, and I did end up getting in, and that's actually where I'm going. So it's definitely good to apply to stretch schools because you can end up really happy in the end. Also, start early. Make sure you're not procrastinating until the deadlines. The deadlines are usually like November, December, but the earlier you get it in, usually the earlier you'll find out if you got in, and that's always good. So start early. Make sure to ask your teachers for references early, especially if it's a teacher that everyone loves. Sometimes by September 1st, they'll already be up to here in recommendation letters and just have to be like, I'm sorry, I can't do any for you. So definitely even ask them like during the summer if it's a teacher that you really, really want to write a recommendation for you, because they fill up really quickly. Also, spend a lot of time writing your essays, because that's like the one thing that it's like your voice, you're telling the college, this is why you should accept me. Have people read over it. Just make sure you get some really solid essays. This is going to be a really long video. I apologize for that, but I hope it helps someone out there. I'm like getting tired of talking, and that's kind of a big deal for me because I love to talk, but I'm like, okay. So you'll find out about your college acceptances somewhere probably between, let's see, I found out my first one Thanksgiving weekend, the day after Thanksgiving. I found out my second one sometime in December, and my third one sometime in January. But if you get waitlisted, you might not even know until like March or April. So it's going to be a long time waiting. Just be patient. In the end, you'll know if you got into schools, and what happens, happens. There's not really much you can do about it. I guess my point of view would be different than people who faced rejection, because I didn't really apply to any like super stretch schools, so I actually got into all the schools I applied to because I don't handle rejection well. So I didn't want to apply to schools that I thought I was going to get denied from. So once you have all of your acceptances, you need to decide ultimately what college you're going to. So here's some things that I think factored in my decision, and hopefully that'll help you to ultimately pick the perfect school for you. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not sure if I made the right decision, but I'm just going to embrace the school that I picked and hope it, works out well. First, you need to figure out what aspects of the school are most important for you. A school that had a lot of school spirit and had really good athletics was important to me because I love being spirited. I love loving my school and everything like that. I was a cheerleader freshman year, so that was really important to me. And also sororities were really important to me. I'm going through recruitment in 2 weeks to be in a sorority, and since I was a little kid, I knew I wanted to be a sorority girl, so a school that had sororities was really important to me, and one of my schools that I applied to didn't have sororities, so that was kind of something that factored my decision. You also need to look at the cost of the school, and I know some of you are going to be paying for college on your own, and some of you are going to have your parents paying for you, but either way, my parents are paying for my college, but I didn't want to put a big financial burden on them, so I kind of ended up picking the cheapest school because, going to a school that's $50,000 a year, I couldn't justify my parents paying $200,000 for my college education. That's just crazy. I couldn't do it. I would feel guilty. So, if your parents are all like, go to whatever school you want, we got enough money, go for it. But I think for most of us, that's not really the case. So you definitely need to look at the financial aid options for each school and find out ultimately which school is going to be the cheapest and which one you're going to get the best education for your money in. You also need to look at the programs for your intended major, and hopefully by senior year you're going to know kind of what you want to go into. So if you do know what you're going to go into, make sure you research the job opportunities that you're going to get from each school and figure out which school actually has the best program for what you want to go into. If you have no idea what you want to go into, then you want to go to a school that isn't just good for one thing, it's good all around so that no matter what program you go into, you're going to have job opportunities. You also just need to research around and find out, which schools employers are going to be looking for new employees at and which schools are going to give you the best options. The schools that I applied to, some of them would have given me great options in that city, but I think the one that I settled on is going to give me great opportunities all around. And if schools have great reputations and employers are going to be looking for employees there, that's a great school to go to. You need to make sure there's a school that's all around going to give you a good job no matter where you end up living in your life. You also need to decide how far you want to go from home, because when you get to the end of your senior year and you're realizing that you're leaving your family, sometimes it's better to stick around home than to go hours and hours and hours away. But if you can't wait to get out of the house, you go. You go away and, enjoy that. It's whatever's best for you. For me, I didn't want to go away 5 states. I wanted to be, somewhat close to home.